Okay, it's my great pleasure to introduce to you my good friend Nora Cohen. She is an artist living currently in San Diego, and I first got to know her in graduate school when we were both working on our MFAs about 100 million years ago. So, welcome, Nora. Thank you so much for coming and talking with us and sharing a little bit about your experience as an artist and a little bit about the work that you do.
Yep, my pleasure.
Okay, so what do you? I know that you do a couple of different things. What do you regard yourself as primarily as an artist? Are you a painter? Are you a poet? Are you a what? Talk
That's
about
a
that a little.
really good question. I guess I would say I'm both.
Mhm.
I guess I'm yeah, now that I've kind of been doing poetry for a while, I guess I feel comfortable calling myself a poet. Maybe not in the beginning,
Mhm.
but I do see them sort of both as like extension of the same process, even though they kind of manifest differently.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, they both are about like connecting both to like the personal and collective unconscious
Oh wow. Yeah.
and kind of um, processing that kind of information. So even though they like um, are different forms, they both have the same source. So yeah, I would say I'm both a painter and a poet.
Cool. Do you find that they influence one another?
That's a very good question. I would say probably, but I don't necessarily know how. Um, and that like that may be
I
a
think that's
similar.
totally valid.
Yeah, I mean that's probably a common theme to like how I think and feel about my work.
Mhm.
That uh, there is, I recognize sort of things that are there, but like how exactly,
Mhm.
I don't necessarily see or don't even necessarily find to be that important to me
Right.
personally in my process.
Right. It's just part of the process and not necessarily kind of a linchpin or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I did start writing poetry as sort of a way to talk about my work in a way. I did like I because my work is very um, based on sort of unconscious information. I don't necessarily have the best words to talk
Mhm.
about like a specific painting. So I started writing like kind of stream of consciousness poetry. So it definitely is connected to the work and especially how it started. I don't really do that anymore. I do write poetry separately from my painting, but it's all from the same source. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's definitely connected. But I couldn't tell you exactly how.
I think knowing how might mess it up.
Yeah, I think maybe that isn't even the point.
Yeah.
That like if it was knowable, if it was like specifically knowable, I don't know if I would think it was art in a way. To
Yeah.
me, like mystery is so essential to like creation and to art, and it really is like the mystery itself is really to me like the most important part. So like the fact that I can't really tell you, it's
Mhm.
probably a good thing.
Yes. Yeah. Anything that you've thought about too much can be a problem sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, talk to me a little bit about your painting then. Your style is, I have to say, is really unique, and hopefully I'll have a couple of stills to throw up to accompany this audio, so people can have a look at your work and see
Oh
what
yeah,
kind of stuff
definitely.
you're doing. How often do you paint, and do you paint on any kind of a regularized schedule, or is it really based on inspiration?
I do not paint on a regular schedule. I paint pretty much whenever it calls, whenever I feel it. I actually, for myself, like find it kind of not particularly productive to work when I don't feel it's there.
Hmm.
I work. There'll be times where I don't work for weeks. There'll be times where I work every single day. There'll be times when I make a piece, complete a piece in 8 hours. There'll be times where I complete a piece in 6 months. It's really subject to like the whim of the process itself, and I try to as much as possible to like um, allow myself to like resign to the process and not try to control it too much, and that
Hmm.
includes like when I work.
Yeah.
I definitely like I think people who can like kind of create a practice where they like work every single day, no matter whether they feel it or not. Like I think that for some people that works really, really well. And for
Mhm.
some people that's not the best way. And for me, I find that like I, the work, if it's not there, it's just not there for me. But when
Yeah.
it's there, it's really, really there. So it's,
Yeah. Oh,
that's how
that's
it
really
works.
cool. Is your
Yeah.
poetry writing the same way?
Yeah. It's exactly the same way. It's kind of like, I mean, it sounds kind of simple, but it's there or it's not for me.
Mhm.
um and I guess like for a while, like if I had been going through let's say like a long period where I wasn't feeling like it's there, like there's always sort of that like fear of like, oh, is it ever going to come back? But it always does. So it's like I've grown to be okay with that and to like just let it unfold the way it's going to unfold. And
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things for a lot of artists is really getting comfortable with the idea of their own process,
yeah.
and that it doesn't match up to anybody else's necessarily, and it may not even match up to what they wish their process was.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we used to take a lot of heat for that in graduate school.
Take heat in graduate school.
The panic of making something for crit, right? We all remember that.
Yeah, I mean, it is sort of an artificial, like giving yourself sort of a time stamp can be artificial, but it can, but you know what? Like, it can also maybe like spur you to move in a direction that you wouldn't have moved on your own. So it's it really, the creative process is so individual, and different people need different stimuli.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and I think it's a good idea to experiment with different kinds of stimulus, and it's
mhm,
like you're saying, sometimes that having that artificial deadline can inspire you to try something different that you might
mhm.
not have tried before.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
so I can't necessarily slam making something for crit, but I'm kind of glad I don't have to do that
It's
anymore.
nice. It's nice to not have crit anymore. Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is. Oh gosh. But the flip side of that is having like meaningful critique from
Yeah.
people who understand your work.
Yeah.
Um, do you have a way of getting meaningful critique and commentary from folks who get you, who understand your
Oh yeah,
process?
yeah, definitely. Although I do, this is going to sound maybe awful, but I do think that the best way to go is to listen to yourself, no matter what.
Yeah.
But definitely, yeah, people who you trust. It doesn't need to be in a formal setting, but people who you trust to see your work in process, like it's always great to get feedback, even if you're going to ignore it completely.
At least you know what other people think
At
about
least
it,
you know what
right?
other people think about it. Absolutely. And you know what? I don't even, when I say ignore it completely, it's probably not even completely accurate, because I genuinely feel that like everything that you encounter in some way is like translated into your being, like subconsciously,
Mhm.
unconsciously. So even if like consciously you're like, well, I am not listening to that, you probably are on some level. You just may not know it.
Yeah.
Um, so I think any feedback that you get is good. But again, yeah, I think like you said, like having people who you trust, who know your process, like that's important.
Yeah, I've had a lot of difficulty showing my work to just kind of random people.
Yeah.
You know, they would be people in my life that I trusted and loved and appreciated their
Hmm,
opinion
hmm.
about other things. But if they weren't really aware of my process or what my intention was, and this all sounds very art school,
Yeah.
but if they weren't really aware of my intention, my artistic intention, it was a little challenging sometimes.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's
are
the
you
thing. Oh
aware?
god.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's interesting because like I think about intention, and like that is so like crucial, like to understanding a piece and to understanding a process, and like um but on the other hand, like you also need to be able to like look at a piece and like get it on its own, whether like it means necessarily the same thing that the artist is thinking,
Yeah.
probably not, but like this kind of has to be both. It's like it, it can be both specific and non-specific at the
Oh
same
no,
time,
I
if that
totally
makes
get
any
you.
sense. Yeah,
It kind of, to be really successful, I think it kind of has to be personal and universal at the
exactly. Yep.
same. And how you get there is really highly individualized, and it's different for every person, I think.
Yep.
Do you know how you get there? Do you just follow your gut and
I just follow my gut. at this point. I mean, I don't know if I'm sure it wasn't always like that. I think it was a long process of um, I'm going to say this, but I mean this actually in two different ways, like learning to let go. So
Mm-hmm.
learning everything that you possibly can so you can like let go of it and not think about it, and also learning to let go.
Yes.
Like both of those things I think are really important to my particular process. I feel like once again, like it's about trusting yourself and what works for you. And I think once I like was really comfortable in that,
Mm-hmm.
um, then everything kind of falls more into place. Like it fell more into place.
How
Once I
do you
stopped,
get there? How do you get to that place?
you know what? At this point, like it just like I fall into it. Like it's not. It's I don't. I mean, and obviously it doesn't happen every single time I'm
Mm-hmm.
painting. It doesn't happen every single time I'm writing. I'm not going to say like I don't get frustrated or I don't like question myself. Or I mean, I don't think anybody could ever let go of that 100%. But um, for the most part, I maybe it's just practice. Maybe it's just um, I don't know. It kind of everything just clicks and I just fall into it and I don't I let go of myself. I like time passes and I don't really remember what happened. Like that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. It's you fall into some sort of altered state where it just kind of you get out of your own way. I know this sounds kind of silly, but like you get out of your own way and you let what wants to come through as
Mm-hmm.
much as possible. I mean, again, I don't think it's ever going to be. I don't think it's possible for it to be 100% because like we're human, but I just fall into the flow.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's not just completely flow. There's a direction that happens with the
Yeah.
work. Yeah, you're still guiding
Absolutely.
it in the direction you want it to go in. So,
Oh, sure. And I think that like comes as well from like the learning part. Like, so it's not that you aren't, um, it's not like you don't have the tools. It's not like you don't have the intention. It's not like you don't have um, the idea. It's that you let all those things come through without um, trying to stop them, I guess, if that makes any sense.
yeah, yeah. Oh, it
Um,
totally does. And without that kind of second guessing. And I think we all have kind of gone through that period of time where you do something and it feels completely authentic and
mhm,
right.
mhm.
And then you start second guessing it.
Yeah,
So, how
yeah.
do you get past something like that? How often do you find yourself second guessing your work? And then how do you move
How
past stuff like
often
that?
do I don't know, it's hard to like put a quantitative or like
Mhm.
qualitative like um I wouldn't know how to answer that question.
Does it just
You
happen
know,
sometimes or almost
yeah,
never?
sometimes I'd
Mhm.
say. Um, I'm probably more with my poetry than with my painting
Mhm.
because I haven't been writing as long as I've been painting. So I guess maybe like there is more of that um, or it's still a newer process relatively speaking, so maybe I don't have the same comfort level with it yet. Maybe like
Mhm.
there's more growing that I need before I can be more uh, secure, I guess, in that kind of process. But yeah, I mean, it happens sometimes. Every once in a while, it's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, yeah. It is. And I think a lot of us second guess things sometimes without realizing that we're doing it.
Yeah,
I know that happens to me a lot of
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm sure, you know what? I bet I do that all the time and don't even realize it.
times. We have to think about that the next time.
Yeah. Well, again, I think, so much of it is not, um, who knows what's happening in the subconscious, you know?
Right. Yeah. And your work, especially your painting work, is seems to be very much about what's happening in the subconscious.
Yeah, I'd say that that's a really fair assessment. That it's, and because it's, um, from a subconscious or unconscious source. Again, like it's sort of inherently unknowable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like it speaks to symbolism in the sense of like the symbol being inherently unknowable, sort of pointing to something that is beyond our ability to comprehend as humans, but that we all kind of know
Mm-hmm.
on some level, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I guess it's like the personal universal.
Yeah.
I guess that's a theme that'll be touched upon now and again.
Yep. Yep. Sounds good. I know personally, I love your work on a lot of different levels.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, and I always have. And one of the things that I notice is that I'll respond to it in several different ways. I always respond to the color choices that you make because those seem very emotional in a way. And I get a lot of the emotional impact of your work from those color choices and the interplay of colors.
That's cool.
Is that something that you focused on, or do you find that you have a palette that you keep going back to?
I mean, I definitely find myself gravitating to pinks and reds. I mean, if I think about it, I could think about it, and talk about like relation to the body and to, blood, death, life, fleshiness. So I think that those things definitely appeal to me. I think, again, there's also just like an inherent connection to certain kind of colors that isn't necessarily logical. I mean, I guess it's a bit of a, contradiction, because on the one hand, I want to say, I don't really choose what colors I'm using, but of course I do. I go to the store and I buy the colors that I want to use, and like, so but in the process of painting, I kind of pick things up, without consciously saying, oh, now I want to use this color, now I want to use that color. It just kind of happens in the process. So, yeah, I think I just naturally, my color sense has just sort of evolved naturally as a part of the process. It's not like I don't intentionally choose a palette, but there are definitely colors that I gravitate towards. Recently, I've been into like using metallics and like interference colors and things like that. Yeah, interference colors are awesome.
I know, I love them.
They're magic. It's like fairy dust in like a little tube.
Well, I haven't been painting that long. I had to leave graduate school before I could start painting because everybody in graduate school wanted me to paint. But one of the things that I like about interference colors is they fit with the kind of my overall conceptual underpinning that's pretty much in everything I do and all the photography work I do as well, which is I'm showing you something, but I'm not really showing you what you think I'm showing you.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, so that the interference colors work beautifully for that. So
even the name, like interference colors, like that's
just
kind of awesome.
We should all be interference.
We should all be interference colors. Yeah, definitely. And lately, I've been working a lot on like black backgrounds, black gesso, instead of prepping my work with white. I've been prepping it with black, and like interference colors are just amazing.
Yeah, pretty magical.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Here's now a really totally prosaic question about selling your work.
Yeah.
You have buyers. People buy your work. How do you get your work in front of people who want to buy it?
Gosh, that's a really good question, which is, again, hard to answer. I think, I mean, I guess putting yourself out there as much as possible and responding to calls for things, and putting your work in front of as many people as possible. But I think, honestly, like if you do honest work, then the people who are honestly interested in your work, like you'll connect somehow. I think it's more, to me at least, like it's more important to do honest work and to do what is in your calling than it is to adjust your work to sell it.
Right. That's I can remember a lot of different artists whose work I've read stuff they've written about, and that's something that always seems to come through. A theme that comes through is that you need to make the work that you need to make, and the audience, finding the right audience is the tricky part, but they will
absolutely
find you if you put yourself out there.
Yeah, yeah, I
What
think
kind of ways
that's the best way I
what
can
kind of
answer
ways do
that.
you put yourself out there? Are you part of
I mean,
a
for a while I was part of a collective
Mhm.
when I was in New York, and we did our own shows. Um, you know, there are lots of calls out there for work. There are lots of spaces that host work.
Mhm.
You know, that's pretty much what I've done. Um, yeah.
Are you using social media at all?
I've recently started using Instagram. I'm not like the biggest social media savvy person. I had to learn how to use this meeting software. See, I just called it software. You see, app. But I think that it could be a really, really good tool. I think that it definitely is a necessary thing to do, especially in contemporary society. I'm a bit of a Luddite. I
I
don't
think
know
a
if you
lot of
remember
artists
in graduate school. In graduate school, I didn't have a cell phone. Yeah, like. Yeah.
this may be why you're able to maintain a reasonable level of productivity as an artist.
Yeah, yeah, could be.
There are times when I wish I didn't have a cell phone.
Oh, I do now. I
Yeah.
I, I sadly have a cell phone, but
Well, you couldn't live without one at this point.
no, it's so true.
All right, great. Is there anything else that you feel like you've learned as an artist, if you have continued to work on your artwork and
Mm.
progress forth, that you think is important for people to hear or to know either about you or potentially about their own practice?
I guess like the most important thing that I can tell people, or that is important to me, is like listen to your process, listen to yourself, listen to your heart. Like you know what is best for you. You are the conduit to your own creativity. So go with that.